Hey everyone, welcome to the First Three Knocks. It's Brother Steve Sprott here, and before we begin, I just want to let you know about the awesome stuff that our friends at Fraternal Ties have available on their website. They have everything from Masonic footwear and t-shirts to unique things like Masonic pillows and custom bow ties. They just came out with a beautiful natural acacia watch. It's a beautiful timepiece and it's loaded with Masonic symbolism. Check them out at fraternalties.com. You will not be disappointed. FRATERNALTIES.com.
On this episode, we'll talk about famous Freemasons.
You're listening to the First Three Knocks, a Masonic podcast in the District of York, where we discuss topics for the betterment of Masonry. The opinions discussed in this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent the views of Grand Lodge or any other Masonic body. Now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello, brethren.
Hello.
We are back in Zaradetha in Uxbridge, up north in Durham, but part of York District. My name is Brother Gino Scovio, Junior Warden of the Rising Sun, your co-host, and I'm also sitting here with
Worshipful Brother Burt Tellier, the IPM of the Rising Sun Lodge in Aurora, Ontario.
And Brother Steve Sprott of Zaradetha Lodge 220 in historic, beautiful Uxbridge, Ontario.
Oh, he had to put in beautiful on that
right?
one.
And historic. Come
historic
on.
and beautiful, my lord.
All right, pump.
I mean, we're hurting here. We gotta bring in some tourism.
Well, today we're going to chat a little bit about some famous Freemasons, and I think we're going to try a little bit of a different format here. I've got a list here. I've got about 10 of them that I was able to find, and I'm going to talk about them, and maybe you can, Bert or Steve, can jump in and guess who they might be. And we're talking, again, from back in the day to a little bit of current. So we'll start with this particular fella. So this particular Mason, well, I think the answer is going to be pretty simple once I give you a little bit of a hint.
You're
But
teasing us,
he
Gino.
endured in and revolutionized a particular industry, creating what was known as the Model T.
Oh, it was Henry Ford.
Well, there's an easy one. I mean, it's kind of hard not to know that.
You can have any color as long as it's black.
Henry Ford was a Mason. He was actually a member of Zion Lodge number 1, and he really, I think, embodied what Masonry was. Not only did he create and revolutionize the car industry by making the Model T Ford that was the most famous, he really changed the improvement of conditions by paying people $5 per workday. I have no idea what they made back then, but
As opposed to 10 cents per workday.
Exactly, right? So he really, I think, embodied the fundamentals of Masonry and gave back to his own employees, which helped them really push forward with kind of this whole creation of the whole car industry. And as one of the pioneers of welfare capitalism, Ford not only changed that industry forever, but he changed it for the better. And so it really talks about the qualities of Masonry and how he was able to do that. We'll just go with little snippets here because I only have a little bit of info per. This one might be a bit tougher. Freemasons aren't just hard-nosed businessmen looking to get top of where they kind of exist. His father was Sir William Wilde. Maybe that might have given it away right there.
Is his last name Wilde?
Was his first name Oscar?
I guess I should have thought this one out a little bit. Yeah, Oscar Wilde was a Mason. He joined Apollo University Lodge. And actually, in a little bit of a read-up here.
Where was Apollo? Where was it?
I don't have exactly where that was. He was actually expelled from one of his lodges for owing other members money for their gowns and then failed to pay his subscription to Churchill Lodge. So he joined a couple. However, he ended up making good and he continued along his Masonic journey. Oscar Wilde was at Oxford. So he was actually, there you go.
He's
Oxford,
Ireland.
Oxford was where he was when he joined Apollo Lodge. This one here was kind of cool. The King of the Wild Frontier.
Davy Crockett.
Davy Crockett. There's a pretty old folk hero.
Davy Crockett.
Here's a cool thing of Davy Crockett. When I went to go to Georgia, Savannah particularly, I went to visit a lodge, King Solomon Lodge number 1. And
Number one?
Number 1.
Oof.
It was cool. It's in the old Cotton Exchange building, which is made of terracotta. It was just a beautiful,
cool.
beautiful building. It's right downtown in the heart of Savannah. It overlooks the Riverway, which is stunning. And when I went to go visit there, as I said before, we had a sign on the door, and they had every other Saturday open to the public. So I'd called, and I'd missed it, of course. And sure enough, my fellow brother, who I'd never met, but he's in my family of Masonry, was happy to welcome me, my wife, my kids, and my brother-in-law to have me come in. And he showed me the apron worn by Davy Crockett. So I thought that was awesome. One of the coolest things. He was, again, attacked by Mexican soldiers on the Battle of Alamo. But he discovered that, working hard and fighting hard for the betterment, you can come over anything. So Davy Crockett is another famous Mason for those who didn't know. All right, many modern-day British kings appear on this list of Freemasons. However, this particular Mason was a predecessor to Queen Victoria.
King James?
Nope. King George II was a Freemason. Trying to find the lodge that he was. He was a speech therapist with Lionel Logue, a Masonic master, and worked with the Royal Masonic School. George himself was also very involved and was reluctant to give up his Masonic office when he ascended to the throne. He really wanted to continue to be a part of Masonry while he was in the throne. A few years later, the war, he wrote, Freemasonry has been one of the strongest influences of his life. And it really set the tone for others to follow. Here's a famous Freemason who's very much in the music scene. Famous singer was
Brad Paisley.
No. Famous singer was one of the many black musicians who joined Thomas Waller Lodge number 49, Los Angeles. He joined in 1983 alongside his drummer Lee Young.
Nat King Cole.
Nat King Cole.
Oh, I was going to say David Lee Roth.
Famous jazz musician and Freemason. A fact of his lodge, Nat King Cole attended the Jazz and Freemason Lodge, and his father was also a Freemason, I believe, is what it says. There's the train. If you
holiday train here in Uxbridge.
Uxbridge has a holiday train. I think Santa's on it or something like that, and they have the kids run out.
It's a beautiful heritage town. So if you want to come down, we have the heritage train ride.
Sprotty, are you the mayor of Uxbridge? I wasn't aware you had.
We also have a beautiful Masonic Lodge, Zaradatha, number 220.
Yeah, it's very decent.
All right, moving on to another very notable Freemason. This particular fella was a notable classic composer. He can also be found among Freemason ranks. Take a wild guess, guys. Mozart was a Freemason. He was an apprentice at first, but swiftly became master, probably in and around 1785. In that same year, his lodge merged with another, forming the new lodge, Zur Nuchten Hoffnen. I apologize if I incorrectly said that.
Assassinated the German language.
Most likely.
Yeah.
To celebrate, Mozart composed 2 songs, and these formed part of much of the bigger body of works that Masons have influence in. Bruce Bellows, a very worshipful brother Bruce Bellows, has mentioned to us that back in some older times, a lot of our ritual was done through music. So as we were going through the ritual and you're going through one station to the next, music was delivered. And in my findings, some of that music was written by Mozart.
Well, I think very worshipful Brother Bruce Bellows was alive when Mozart was alive. Isn't that the case?
Well,
they were in lodge together, I think.
You probably are 100%
Something like
right.
that.
All right, another famous Freemason. Ever wonder where involvement Freemason might take you? Maybe to the moon.
Oh, to the moon, Alice.
Buzz.
No, Buzz Aldrin.
Buzz Aldrin, another Freemason. That's what happened to Edwin Buzz Aldrin, who was a famous Freemason, the second man on the moon after Neil Armstrong. He was a very devoted Mason. Aldrin took a Masonic flag with him up on Apollo 11 craft. So, if you have the technology to go visit the moon one day, there are a handful of flags up there, I believe, from the various countries who successfully made it. But the Freemasons flag is also up there, so that's kind of pretty cool.
Interestingly enough, quick fact: there is a lodge on the moon that he was given sanction to start, and it's called Tranquility Lodge, I believe, number 2000.
It's a great name.
That's awesome, and
that's out of Texas.
Exactly what I was going to read on next. So you hit that on the nail. Special permission from Masons to claim Masonic territorial jurisdiction. Most Masonic worshipful Grand Lodge of Texas, ancient free and accepted Masons, derived by allowing a lodge to constitute up on the moon. So that's just amazing.
So Grand Lodge of Texas is running, like, is that where it's
the most worshipful Grand Lodge of Texas? Ancient free and accepted Masons are the governing body of the Masonic Lodge that is actually. Was once
Where's
stationed
the Grand Lodge
on
of
the moon.
Texas anyways? I'm just curious.
And I know the actually Tranquility Lodge meets a couple times a year, from what I've read, and you can join it. I believe it's about $25 a year with an initiation fee of $100, and you can actually go and join Tranquility Lodge. And they say they meet on Earth until it's possible to meet on the moon, and once it's possible to meet on the moon, they'll be meeting on the moon.
I was going to say, Brother Sprott, you've actually reached out to them, have you not? And kind of got some information, or I think we're still trying to get if we can get some maybe interviewer over the phone or something.
Yeah, I was trying to set something up. Haven't really heard a response yet. They just said we'll get back to you, but yeah.
Well, that's just cool. I mean, a Freemason globally, and now we're also within the universe.
This is the Grand Lodge of Texas here.
I don't know if we can see that on there.
It's Waco, Texas.
We're going a little bit of a live stream today too, so that's pretty cool.
I have interest in that because we just opened a new production facility in Texas for my company, and I'm down in Texas often. And on my list of things to do, I'd like to get into some of the lodges down in Texas. And
well, then maybe you should join the Moon Lodge here. And
Tranquility Lodge.
You might find yourself in that part of the world when they meet once in a while. So moving along, the list of there's a lot of politicians that somehow through history were Masons.
Most presidents, it seems.
Most presidents would seem. And again, we've talked about this before. It's not that they've made their way because they're Masons. It's just it was within the foundation of what Masonry is, a betterment of improvement.
And the leadership.
And the leadership. And if you can kind of grow your own self-being, and that resonated to outside of your lodge doors and walls and within your community, then you know what? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So the list of politicians who are also Freemasons is strangely long and great. This British Prime Minister was no exception. We'll leave it at that, because if
it's Churchill.
There you go. Winston Churchill.
The great orator. Winston Churchill.
He joined the order in 1901, and it was all the rage with the newly ascended King Edward VII, a former Grandmaster. Churchill joined Studholme Lodge, along with others. Other MPs, knights, and royalty quickly became Master Masons in tradition of their ancestry before him. There later was even a lodge named after him, Churchill Lodge. Let's continue on. We got a couple more, and then we'll just kind of wing it at that point. Another Mason to follow the family tradition. This fella was raised as a Mason in July of 1970 at Marion McDaniel Lodge number 56.
What town?
Let's see if it tells us. It does not.
Let's go back to my 1956 history expertise.
He was
here.
very politically active, and at one point was asked to run for the office on behalf of the Republican Party. He declined, but supported his friend, a fellow actor, Ronald Reagan.
Oh, is it Gene Autry?
It is not Gene Autry. So he was an actor, very famous. I've been told, as much as I've not seen any of his work, there's a lot of Masonic symbolism in his work.
Peter Sellers.
Not. We're talking.
Peter Sellers was a Mason, though.
Yeah.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Very.
That was Gino's next person.
Cowboy.
Oh, it was Pilgrim. What's his name? Come on.
You got it. It's
As
on
if
the
I
tip of
can't-
your tongue.
Wayne.
John Wayne.
John
You
Wayne.
got
John
it.
Wayne.
He was a member of the right-wing John British Society for a while, and was promoted. And no wonder the Mason welcomed him in their society and end of his life. Again, Worship Brother Les Goth is a huge John Wayne fan, talks about it all the time, and says in every single movie that he was in, there is Masonic symbolism almost everywhere in each and every scene. So it's pretty cool, to the point where there's some very specific stuff that only Masons would, I think, be able to identify or get in whatever was said in
That's that
the
whole
words.
spaghetti western genre.
I couldn't get into it personally. I guess now that I'm a Mason, maybe I'll go back and just look for all those identifying symbols. But all right, and then one of the biggest and most famous Masons in the world. Before I even get into it, what do you think?
The most famous Mason in the
One
world.
of the most famous Freemasons in the
George
world.
Washington.
There,
wow.
you can't get any more famous than that.
That is the epitome of
It
Masonry.
won't surprise
right
you
there.
to know that there have been a fair few Freemasons in the White House. After all, when a society is this powerful, you'd expect its members to reach the pinnacle of political success. So, Gerald Ford was a Mason. Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, and Franklin Roosevelt were Masons. But one of the most famous presidents and founders of America was also a Mason. He was initiated in 1752, but apparently wasn't the most dedicated in attending meetings. He declined a Grand Master position in 1777, saying that he had never seen, he'd never even been in a master, he'd never been the master of his lodge. However, the year before he became president, he accepted the offer to become master of the Alexandria Lodge in Washington. And again, to tie into President George Washington, when visiting Savannah and seeing Davy Crockett's apron, General George Washington, before coming president, visited King Solomon Lodge number 1 as a traveler. And I sat my butt in the same very chair that he visited. So I kind of rubbed butts with George Washington,
Oh,
which
well,
I
there
thought
you
was
go.
kind of cool.
You're one and the same.
One and the same. So yeah, those are a small list of, I would say, maybe the top 10 more famous.
That's a pretty good list. I think that if we're looking for examples on what it means to be a Mason, there is that's an incredible list of guys to follow, huh?
Absolutely.
Boy, did they give a good example.
And there's a handful more. Maybe Ashton Kutcher. It's
Yeah, some more
suggested
recent
that he
ones,
might.
yeah.
I mean, he has the Masonic symbols on certain things, but we don't know. I haven't read that he actually is or is a part of one. I believe Shaquille O'Neal is a Mason and I think is quite active in the craft. Richard Pryor was a Freemason. If we're going to go in those particular ways, Brad Paisley, as you mentioned recently in the last one in Nashville. I mean, there are so many, and it truly just goes back to, Masonry. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what it is. If you believe that there's a higher being, and that, he's there to reward you and punish you, then you are more than welcome to have interest and join the craft. And if you're ever sitting in Craft Lodge and that celebrity is next to you, they are no more or less. They are equal. We're all at the same level, and it's what kind of is really cool of Masonry. Again, you get some
craft.
pretty prestigious brethren out there that are very well known outside lodge, but they are the most humbling of gentlemen, I'm sure, when they're sitting in lodge and outside lodge towards their brother in their fraternity. So there you have it. Small list of some of the most more famous Freemasons, if you will. And hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The First Three Knocks. Happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again.